So today, part two, welcome back, everybody. For both of us, it's morning. For me, it's really early morning. It's 8 o'clock. That's early for me. So there's something, I don't know if you guys know about this, but there's something called ultradian rhythms. You know, we have circadian rhythms, but I did not know about this. Ultradian rhythms. And the ultradian rhythms are complicated, but in terms of what we do in trainings, it's really shown that like the first 15, 20 minutes, not a lot of learning takes place. That it's really us getting into the flow of things. So we've engaged our focus, hopefully. We've told our brain to focus. I'm going to focus on what I'm learning. And then it kind of takes this 15-minute lag time. So I like to give myself the grace that I am waking up and you're going to forget a lot of this beginning anyway. So, but I will introduce and start to get into part two of consultation with the brain and mind. So just to remind you that the focus of what we're here to talk about is the challenges that come up in your work as a consultant, but particularly the brain reasons and the mind reasons why it might be so challenging. It's not so much, here's some strategies. There are strategies, knowledge is a strategy, but based on the reflections, I just want to be super clear. Like you guys get a lot of strategy-based trainings. I want it to be different and really help you with this understanding so that you can implement the strategies you do have with discernment. But in addition to that, there already have been some strategies with the knowledge of the brain reasons for behavior. But I want to hear from you what you thought. So today, I first want to let you know that the 11 people responded to the reflection form out of the 16 last time, and I super appreciate that because, as I mentioned, those reflection forms help me guide the second training. I pivot based on what you said your needs were. So the reflection form is what I valued, how I'll use what I learned, what I need, and I look at what you need and think, okay, what can I do? And in this round, the people who responded, the ones that are small, they were talking about what they needed for themselves and they're going to handle that. And that's great. You can use that portion of the reflection form for that. I'm also looking at what can I do? And so one person said they'd like to know more about executive functioning and the 9 prefrontal cortex functions. I would love to do a training on that. Today, we're not going to go deeper with that. I use that to introduce the brain in the palm of the hand. So this isn't about that. It may come up again in terms of consulting, but I won't be doing any targeted executive functioning training. I will point you to my website where I have an article that I wrote about EF, in particular about children with special needs and disabilities. And then more learning about the brain and mind science, polyvagal theory, heart-gut connections, and what research is being done. Amen to that. That stuff is so good. I'm weaving in brain and mind science today for sure. I might bring in polyvagal like I did last time a little bit, but it's not particularly targeted on that. So I wanted you to know I heard you. I'm not ignoring you. I'm just trying to stay in my little scope of what I'm here to talk about. But I did add on a slide at the end for the person who was interested in polyvagal. And this brain and mind science is all over my website. Right? And then how to intervene when distress is present. Yep, that's where we're here, what we're here for. When challenges arise, what do we do, right? Why do we get as challenged as we get? That's really what we're focusing on. And then with that, what can we do? Training number 3 is really going to get at the framework that you've been promised. Okay, so today we're still going to do a lot of the brain and mind reasons. And then part 3, it's okay, keeping the brain in mind. How can we proceed when challenges arise? But I'm not rushing. We're not rushing to fix. We're not rushing to get in and just solve the problem. When we do that, we bypass important data. Namely, for you guys, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Where do I feel this in my body? What are my beliefs about this? Biases, right? Explore your privilege. I was looking at the IEC MHC competencies again, because I was invited to make sure I linked this to that those are important to the work that you do. And I saw that language woven in there too, right? Values, perceptions, beliefs, biases, privileges. But we're also looking at the brain reasons why some of those might exist. Right? So for today, what I want to have you guys do is just to take a pause to consider what you've sort of held onto from last time. So this isn't a formal review. Many people do reviews in their trainings. I like to do this kind of polling for you to review yourself. So there's a link here, everybody. So here we go with your links. It is in your PowerPoint and it should work. I just tested it this morning from the PDF, but Maria just put it in the chat as well. And then I'm going to click it here just to show you where we're going. And then I'm going to be quiet. There we go. Consulting considerations. It's a Google Doc. It's anonymous. I will not know who answered what, but I will be able to get the responses. And then we'll share kind of, it gives me an idea about where I need to go deeper and where I can just pivot and move on. So if you guys would just take a few moments to fill out this consulting considerations. Just consider, what did you learn? So my goal and my intention in doing this is to provide you with an opportunity to just kind of re-enter this training series and review, reflect. So, or what I call, when I'm in therapy, I help people retrieve, reflect, and then release when it's something traumatic. I don't want you to do the release part so much today. I want you to hold on to what you've learned, and then we're going to build upon it today. So just a quick check-in. I love these just Google polls. The current belief is the brain isn't fully developed. Oh, by the way, this is all stuff I covered last time. So the current belief is human brain isn't fully developed into, it's the early 30s now. So that's the update. So I first learned that from Dr. Bruce Perry. I was listening to him on a podcast and I was like, well, of course, no wonder. I always say, at this moment, this is what we believe, or at this moment, this is what's currently stated to be true about the human brain. We work with humans, not Hondas, you guys. There's no manual. You can't just plug it in, decide what's going on. Child through adult. The human brain is complicated. And then we get the mind in there. Interpersonal neurobiology talks about the difference between the mind and the brain. The mind and the brain, super complicated, complex. And the more scientists study, the more we work with the human brain and mind in the context of relationships, the more we learn that what we knew is constantly changing. This is especially relevant when we're working with other adults who say to you, I've always done it this way, but this is how I've always done it. I understand that. And we work in a field where how we've always done it, we need to build upon that and be flexible with that. So that can be hard. The change can be a hard thing, is true. But the knowledge is the place to start, just the belief. So now taking that research and that evidence that the brain is still developing into the early 30s, how does that impact you? How do you update your beliefs, your values, your perceptions, your biases? The mind and the brain are different. They work to influence one another. Everyone was on board with that. The same with the human brain makes meaning of things by associating and predicting. Beautiful that you got that. That's particularly important because when uncertainty exists, as it does all the time, the human brain and mind can be super challenged because the human brain wants to associate and predict, to know, and the mind gets right on board there. The story in your head is, I need to know, I need to be certain, I need to plan, I need to organize. What do I do next? Associating and predicting. So it can create chaos for a human being when there's a lot of uncertainty. And we're still amidst, pandemic things. Things are still uncertain. Now this whole are the masks going away? Are they not? There's so much uncertainty. And prior to the pandemic, we had uncertainty in our lives. Uncertain how to advise or mentor as social emotional consultants, the service coordinators, the people that I'm working with, the parents, the families, right? Uncertainty. According to interpersonal biology, the mind is all answers except for A. Absolutely. So I just want to say to you too, because I didn't say this last time, it may be helpful. In interpersonal neurobiology, which is the field that Daniel Siegel created, and therapists like myself, not many, but it's growing, we look at the brain as the structure, the mechanism, the mechanism that structures the flow of energy and information. So right now, packets of energy in the form of sound waves are coming out of my mouth. That's energy. But the information is the words, the English language. So right now, your brain is structuring the flow of that energy and information. It's starting to make meaning. It's associating each word with a definition you already know. And it's predicting the words that are going to come out of you just finished it, you predicted, mouth. Or it's predicting, meaning it's taking in how you're going to use this meaning. It's predicting the usefulness. It's predicting what this means to you. And it doesn't do it alone, because in the mind, which is just an emergent property, we can't hold the mind in the palm of our hand. We can hold the brain in the palm of our hand. It's a structure, but the mind's an emergent property. And that's why it's so elusive and so hard to wrap our minds around. The mind monitors and modifies the flow of energy and information. These are interpersonal neurobiology definitions. And then relationships are the context in which energy and information are shared. So the mind and the brain in the context of relationships influence each other ongoing. So this is why I'm bringing this in for you guys. It's important. A lot is said about the brain, and that's important. Let's do this, but let's not forget the mind, the mental activity. We talk about mental health and following the mental health competencies, but in most times when I poll people, when I do work with other therapists, and I ask, how much training did you have about the mind? And most people say zero, and even say zero about the brain. So we're working with human beings, and you're working with adult human beings who have a complex system going on, and then they don't even know that they're not even having any awareness or knowledge of it. I guess that's not fair. They might have some, and it's burgeoning and it's emerging, but we're going to help them to get to the next level. At birth, our brain has the capacity to both A and D. So a couple of people said all of the above. At birth, it's currently believed at birth, our brain does not have the capacity to manage emotions. So the human brain doesn't fully develop till the early 30s. And the part of the brain that's primarily, not solely, responsible for managing emotions, it's currently believed, is that prefrontal cortex, the last part of the brain to fully develop. That is why serve and return, co-regulation, so important. Not just 0 to 5, throughout the development of the human brain, and then even beyond, you guys. So we can, as adults, if you're past the early 30s, pretty reliably self-regulate. We have the structure, the neural networks, right? That doesn't mean we always use them, but we can. But young children don't have those neural networks developed enough, it's currently believed, to do the self-regulation, and definitely not the attune to others, because that's the prefrontal cortex. They can elicit behaviors from people. They can cry, they can fuss, they are engaging with others to get their needs met, but attuning is different. They don't have that self-awareness of the intrapersonal attunement yet, and they certainly can't tune in and consider what their caregiver or care provider's thinking, feeling, deciding. They don't have that capacity. They share eye gaze, they're doing serve and return, absolutely, but that attuned response is something very, it's a higher order cognitive capacity. Okay. And let me know if any questions come out about this or comments, put it in the chat or pause and we'll discuss it. When challenges arise in my work, the story I'm telling myself, great, you guys all got that. And then the next one, how might consulting with the brain be useful for me in my work? There was no wrong or right answer. I was just curious. One person said this approach promotes self-understanding versus looking outside ourselves for a tool. So that's the way you find it's going to be helpful. And that's going to help integrate the IEC, MHC competencies. And then the rest of the people said B. Okay, great. This gives me an idea now to where we need to go deeper and where we can just build. So thank you. Any questions about that?
Laura, there is a comment in the chat. What else is the prefrontal cortex? Do you
Oh, good. Thank you. Yep. Okay, thanks, Kay. So this prefrontal cortex, right? So we're using Dan Siegel's. I don't need to try to fit into a little cube. Dan Siegel's brain in the palm of the hand, brainstem, limbic center, also diencephalon, all these other things, right? But this is just a bridge and cortex. From the knuckles through here to the fingernails is believed to be the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex does a lot of things. It can do focal attention, executive function skills, and insight, empathy, morality, attuned engagement, physical regulation, emotional regulation, cognitive flexibility, attuned communication. So prefrontal cortex and these are things that are believed to be housed there. It is the language that neuroscientists use, which means all of those things that I just talked about rely on other parts of the brain too. So we have our brain stem likes to categorize things. Okay, this happens here, but it's not that discrete. It's just an elegant way to talk about it that, oh, that's what happens in the prefrontal cortex. It happens throughout the brain. So a lot of the things, like when we talk about school readiness, right? When I work with preschool teachers, especially, it's front of mind for that. School readiness. And that's a lot of this prefrontal cortex skills, just executive function skills. Here we are, we're talking about them again. Planning, initiating, organizing, carrying out a task, shifting gears when necessary, regulating your emotions, resolving conflicts as they arise, and monitoring your ability to do so. Those all fall under the umbrella of EF skills. And that's part of school readiness. And it's like, oh no, we can invite them to continue to learn that. They can do some of that, but not reliably and consistently, because that part of the brain isn't fully developed. So it's this idea about don't short shrift children. They can do some version of this, but not reliable. So that infant who looks like they're attuning because they're smiling, they're sharing eye gaze, it's a form of what we would call attunement, but it's not fully developed yet. It's believed because those parts of the brain are not fully there yet. Yeah. Did I answer you, Kay?
Yes, I don't know if you can hear me, but yes.
I can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so just a quick review. You guys already got this, a lot of this, right? The mind's associating and predicting. I'm sorry, the brain. The mind creates the story. The story I'm telling myself, the story in my head. So this is where we explore those beautiful perceptions, beliefs, feelings, thoughts. And I want to put a plug in again, like I did last time, body sensations. You're getting a lot of training on trauma, I know, and of course, it's very important for us to be trauma focused. If you're trauma focused, you're body focused. Professor Vanderkolk's seminal work on trauma, the body keeps the score. So a huge part of my day with clients is helping them stop living hair up and start tuning into the body. So for you all that are here, when you're sitting with somebody that you're consulting with, they're coming to you for advice or guidance, collaboration, and it gets challenging. Tune into your body. Tune into your body. Have your mind put the spotlight of attention on it. Where do I feel this in my body? Even just noticing and naming can activate circuits in the brain that start to release neurotransmitters to soothe that, namely GABA. So just noticing and naming, just thinking, why would I ever talk about my body when I have a challenge? Well, your body's noticing when you have a challenge, right? Because usually when I ask people, I'm feeling my heart flutter, I'm feeling my stomach is crunching up, I'm feeling like sick to my stomach, my back is aching, right? Two things in particular I wanted to highlight today that we're going to go deeper with, and then next time really deep with, most likely next time, we won't get to it today, is this idea that when your brain is taking in packets of energy and information, it's scanning for, is this a signal of welcome? Is this a signal of warning? Welcome and warning. That's from polyvagal theory. Some people say safety or danger, but I like welcome and warning. If you are in an integrated all the parts of the human brain are fully connected. Downstairs and upstairs brain are in a nice state of connection. You're integrated in your brain and in your mind. And usually it's hard to be integrated in one place and not in another. I mean, there's no way to measure that, but typically if you're in a reactive state where you flipped your lid, your mind isn't thinking, wow, what a beautiful day. That flower looks so pretty, right? Usually they're in alignment. But if we're integrated, we tend to respond. The word respond, important. Now, if we get hijacked, something triggers us and we flip our lids, we are vulnerable to reacting from the downstairs brain. Respond and react are two different words. They mean different things. People use them interchangeably. I mentioned this last time. I want to go deeper today. Okay. But sometimes when we pick up a signal, that doesn't mean that all the times we pick up a signal of warning, we react. That is not true. I can very much pick up a signal of warning in my brain, and then I can tell myself the story that this is okay. I'm okay, that I am safe, I am satisfied, I am connected, and I can stay integrated. So before my brain has the chance to flip, I can have my mind help soothe the brain. And then I can respond instead of react when the challenge rises. So we're looking at being a human being means we're not perfect. There's no rush to try to get to a place of like, I never react to a challenge. That would be ridiculous. Sometimes you are going to flip your lid and react. So, and that doesn't mean you're throwing a tantrum. It might mean you reach for ice cream. It might mean you sublimate. It might mean something that you are not really navigating the challenge from a fully integrated state of mind and brain. That's okay. But I want you to be aware of that. It's just this gentle awareness with compassion, loving kindness, and non-judgment. Yeah, I flipped my lid. I was reacting there. I was reactive versus responsive. Why? What was going on for me? Well, the story in my head was, right, which I'll give you more of that today. Any questions about that? The other thing people say is my upstairs brain was offline, wasn't connected. That's not entirely accurate language either. We do flip our lids, but it's still here. It's just that the downstairs brain, namely the amygdala, it's believed, has hijacked, and really the focus is coming from the downstairs brain. Okay. So for today, your brain wants to predict and associate what we have learned and predict where we're going. So I'm feeding that. We're going to continue with the brain reasons. Last time, and the mindset for challenges. Last time we did development, brain development. This time we're going to focus on the brain's drives and needs. We may have time for the operating systems. We may not. We may do it next time. And then in that, we'll weave in the mind's thoughts, perceptions, beliefs, emotions, and body sensations. The focus is for you guys to consider how your mind and brain affect your behavior as a consultant when challenges arise. This really is a training for you, not just what you can do with other people, but for you too. So I know the tendency is to think, okay, when Jamie comes in my office, this is what's going on in her brain and in her mind. That's okay too, but don't bypass yourselves. We're so focused outward all the time, but really the place to start is focusing inward. So that's the invitation and the focus. So I will give you time to reflect on this in a breakout group, maybe two, we'll get to, depends on our timing, making sense of what you're learning, making meaning of it. Because I want this to be consultation based on science, not habit. So inviting you to update some of your understanding and your knowledge so that that can inform your practice. Consultation based on science, not habit. And then giving you time to plan, linking to the competencies when you're planning. You guys know the competencies better than I've reviewed them, I've looked at them, and I'm like, oh yeah, very clearly a lot of what I'm talking about connects with different portions of the competencies. But I want to give you guys time to do that. So my goal is to help you work smarter, not harder. So as I mentioned last time, adult learning principles, which you having knowledge of adult learning principle theory is embedded in the competencies. So you may already know this, that any training you go to is made more effective when you take time and plan using your prefrontal cortex for what you hope to gain, or my words, or let go of based on the work we're doing today. Not in general in your life, but based on this content. What do you hope to gain today? And what might you hope to let go of? Usually that's a habit or a tendency or a belief that might be holding you back. Not in general, in this work. And then envision these things while you imagine what's required of you to receive. We're just going to do a quick one today. Just take 3 minutes, but I do encourage everyone to type it out, write it down. Don't keep it in your head because it will fade away. Put it somewhere visual that you can have access to it. And then as we're doing the training, am I getting that met? Am I getting that met? And if you're not, let me know. Okay. That's what it's intended for, is for you to track. Use your executive function skills to track. Am I getting my need met today? I'll be quiet for 3 minutes. As we proceed forward, everybody, again, I'm inviting you to ask for what you need. I'm here for you. This is for you. It's a form of self-care, maybe not a really fun, not as fun as like a spa day or doing some breath work or some yoga, but it really is intended to help your job be easier. So let me know how I can do that today. Last time we talked, we did this review. Today we reviewed about what we talked about last time, but I wanted to give you kind of a visual of what some of this associating, predicting, the story in your head. I wanted to give you a visual, picking up signals of warning versus signals of welcome, reacting versus responding, downstairs versus upstairs brain. What does this look like? Now, here's the challenge. I'm here talking to you. You work predominantly with adults. There's not a lot of adult videos out there of people flipping their lids, picking up on signals of welcome, right? So I'm going to use videos that I use when I'm working with people who work directly with children. I'm not saying you don't, but I'm using this. I understand these are children in the video. It's because that's what I have access to, right? So I'm going to ask you to be looking at this using the knowledge from last time, and then just ask me what you tell me what you see in terms of brain development. What's evidence that one or more of the children picked up on signals of welcome or warning? How can you hypothesize that what the child's brain is associating and predicting? So basically, use the knowledge we've talked about so far to evaluate this video, okay? Evaluate this video, do the best you can. It's gonna go quick because in real life it goes quick. So it's just ask you to write down what you notice, what you see in this video in terms of brain development. Share my screen.
Look, I bring you a ladder. Wow! That's a trap. No, it's not a trap. It's called a ladder.
Oh, I feel like you're okay.
No, that's a trap. Oh, I need one. No, they are not hats. They're nothing.
What did you notice? The brain and the mind and the context and relationship on display for us. What did you notice? I'll focus it more. The boy in the red shirt, his name was Tim, if you didn't hear it. The boy in the red shirt that ended up doing this, the hair. What did you notice about what part of the brain he might have been predominantly organizing from?
I like the way you asked that question.
Thank you.
Strengths-based way, you know, because where he's working on, he's working.
You You cut up. Can you say that
The
again?
downs-
Yeah.
I'm looking at Carly's, the downstairs brain. Yep. Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Really nice. Yeah. And what was the evidence that he was reacting from the downstairs brain? What could we see that made us hypothesize that? Thanks, Carly. What did we see? What was the behavior we could actually observe that we could link to? Oop, that's downstairs brain behavior.
What I noticed was the multiple times that he resisted anyone coming into his space. You know, the other little boy started to take his ladder. It was no. And then I guess he thought the blocks were his too. So the girl was coming in, no. I noticed him being very protective and wanting to keep his toys to himself.
Right. Thank you. Is it Tara or Tara?
It's Tara.
Tara. Thank you, Tara. Yeah. So Tara's talking about the mindset. She's hypothesizing, as we do, not just for children, but for adults. Wow. He took the ladder. You could observe that, right? He pulled it back because he wanted that for himself, right? He thought the blocks were his too, maybe, right? So we're using this mind. We're trying to read his mind, consider what his thoughts were, what his plan was, what his beliefs were, and then attach that to the behavior that we can observe and say, that's a downstairs brain move versus an upstairs brain. But let me ask you guys this, right? So we started with, he was reacting from the downstairs brain. When a child, in this video, when he took the ladder back from the boy, was that a downstairs brain reaction?
Well, I feel like he took it back and said that's not the boy said it was something else, and he was like, no, that's not what this is.
Yeah.
And so he's already predicting what, you know, in his mind, his story was, this is what this is what it's used for. You said it wasn't that, I'm taking it now, not cool.
Totally.
And then I think the little girl kind of was doing the same thing with the blocks. This boy had an idea, his story was, and then she was like, nope, this is what it is. And he was like, absolutely not, and you're gonna get it.
Yeah. So Carly, staying with that, when he was saying it's not in really good ears, because I've heard this 365,000 times, so I have it memorized, but he said, this is not a track, it's a ladder. And he grabbed it. Do you believe, is your guess, that was downstairs brain reaction or integrated brain response?
No, I didn't think it was downstairs brain. I thought it was more integrated. Absolutely.
Yeah, it
very
was
thoughtful in his thing. No, this is not what it is. And
it was. Yeah. So this is where it can get tricky, because I've had people argue me with this, and they might, you know, that's totally fine. That's why I love like looking at stuff with people like, no, because he grabbed it. So it's very interesting. Think about how many times you grab something from somebody, right? Grabbing it doesn't have to be a downstairs brain reaction. It can be very scary when you have 25 humans in a room and people are grabbing things. I'm with you. I was a preschool teacher. I get it, but it isn't downstairs brain. And he's being very articulate. He's telling his plan. He's using executive function skills.
Yeah, it didn't seem as if he was a kid who was simply, I want these toys and I don't want anyone to touch it. There's alternatives. You can take the toy and you can walk away from the other kids. He was choosing to direct traffic.
Yep.
In the play.
Which is an executive function skill. And I would argue, even if he was a kid that was like, nobody else could have the toys, that doesn't mean he's in his downstairs brain. Still not a downstairs brain behavior to think all these toys are mine. What you do with that can be bad. If you start hitting people because you think all the toys are yours, then that's downstairs brain. If you start kicking the toys away from them, downstairs brain reaction. But just being like, I'm a kid, these are all mine, still not downstairs brain. It's a mistaken belief, but it's not a downstairs brain reaction. It's a belief. It's a mindset that is erroneous, but that doesn't mean it's downstairs brain, right? So it's really interesting to just pause and explore in this way, because when we consider adults that we work with, and then what we feel like, are we having a downstairs brain reaction, or is our belief, I don't really enjoy this person. I find myself not looking forward to meeting with him, her, or them. So that's my belief. But what do you do about that? Do you integrate and breathe and stay organized? Do you journal something? Do you just notice, name to tame it? And then you can be integrated. So just because you maybe have a belief that could be activating doesn't mean you're reacting, right? And then with Tim, one thing I don't know if you noticed, Carly did for sure, because apparently Carly's got like Spider-Man ears. I don't know. And many of you might have. It's hard for me to hear it. But Tim also, I would argue, was in his integrated brain throughout, including the time he stood up, went over toward the little girl. Because what he did is he started like this. And in a nanosecond, that amygdala went, crisis! He flipped his lid and then he started shaking her head. So even when he went toward her, it was still a bid for her to give him what he thought were his Duplos that he needed for his plan. Yeah. And when she didn't, that's what happens with kids. The flipping the lid can happen in a nanosecond. And I've even had teachers watch us and say, out of the blue, it happened. Oh, no, it was not out of the blue. It is not out of the blue. There was a lot of pressure being put on Tim, you guys have noticed, and they were trying to derail his plan. And he had a plan of how that play was going to go, right? So it's just a really beautiful way to consider. He was responding throughout until Maria didn't give the Duplos, and then that was reacting. Thoughts?
I'm thinking that makes sense to me simply because I was more focused on Maria and the fact that she didn't perceive him as a threat. You know, she tried to hang in there. Other people tried to hang in with him. So it wasn't until the last section, all of a sudden, wow, my playmate just turned into, you know, someone who was grabbing me.
Scary. Yeah, really beautiful perspective. Thank you for bringing that in. And then I'll build upon that. No one's ever commented on that. That's very interesting. So I'll comment on that too. Maria wasn't perceiving him as a signal of warning. He was coming toward her and she was like, I'm playing with these Duplos. Despite the fact, I don't know if you heard this, I know Carly did, but this other little boy, when Maria took the Duplos, he said, no, those are Tim's. Basically like, girl, save yourself. You know what's gonna happen. So it's that thing in the classroom, right? Everybody knows that Tim can get down. Everybody knows that Tim can have these moments where he reacts and flip his lid. I mean, many of the kids do, right? Most of the kids do. But this little boy was like, no, those are Tim's. And Maria still was like, I'm playing with these. Maria's was rock solid in her integration. She actually misperceived signals, right? She didn't pick up on the signal that danger was coming as Tim came towards her, but he was coming to her like this too. And because their little brains and minds are so underdeveloped, she might not be able, her brain wasn't associating this kid in the red shirt with potential danger. Okay. But the more it happens, the more she will be. She'll be primed. Much as we're primed when we meet with adults, we are associating and predicting how that meeting's going to go based on previous meetings. And this is what can be really tricky because I know you work with service coordinators or work directly with parents. And sometimes they bring in a lot of baggage about working with parents and how frustrating it can be and how hard it can be to have another meeting on the calendar next week when you knew last week didn't go well. So having the understanding that their brain is associating and predicting, their mind's telling themselves the story that that parent is difficult or resistant. Just understanding for you that that's a mind and brain thing. Go ahead.
I had two things that came up for me, but one is I don't consult directly like that. That was very interesting to watch, and I missed like so much of that, which other people saw. So I would have to watch that a lot too. And so I'm thinking about just how would you just say as a consultant to that preschool teacher, how would you help the little boy, that interaction, you know, because he certainly, when he flipped his lid, he did it hard to me, you know, like, you don't, you know, came at someone tough.
Oh, it's unacceptable behavior, scary, dangerous. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, so the question is, how would I consult with a preschool teacher that this was happening in her classroom? Did I hear
Yeah,
you
I'm
right?
just wondering because
Totally.
it's so
Yeah.
much happened in such a short amount of time, like you said. And
Yeah.
how do we, and maybe I'm just interested in that. And then,
Yeah, for sure.
okay, quiet.
Yeah, and we can use it as a parallel to what we might do with an adult, right? So in fact, this is what I do primarily. I go into preschool classrooms and infant toddler classrooms. I videotape the adults. We sit down and we look at snippets. So this is exactly what I do. So if I were to sit down with a preschool teacher with that, we would, the main goal, first of all, I'm always looking at, there was no adults involved here. So if it's an adult involvement, I would say, what were your strengths? What did you do well? What strategies did you use? Right, we focus on strengths. Then we would get to, what do we think's going on here? So I would guide the teacher first, not in the intervention, because that's where everyone wants to rush. And working with humans is 2/3 prevention and promotion, 1/3 intervention. Everybody wants to focus on the intervention, but if you just focus on intervening, you're just chasing problems. I want to try to prevent the problem by promoting the social emotional skills that this child might be missing, understandably, because he's been on the planet 4 years. So that would be the main launching off point, is tell me the knowledge, tell me your understanding, teachers. I always have the whole classroom. Teachers, tell me your understanding of what was going on for Tim. Well, he just wants what he wants when he wants it. Oops, we got some work to do, right? Shaming and blaming kids. So I would walk them through that understanding. And then I can't tell you what the interventions would be for Tim, because I would have to know so much. I would have to know, in California, we have the DRDP, developmental profile. I have to know where he is on that continuum. I'd have to know his family story, right? Setting events. So the context would be important, but the teachers would know. So I collaborate with them with telling me more, telling themselves more, most importantly. But I would use the same brain and the mind stuff that I'm teaching you guys for sure. And then anytime I go into a classroom, I'm always focused on the actual social emotional skills, right? So this is a conflict resolution moment. This is also an emotional regulation moment. So we would probably be focused on 2 things primarily in terms of intervention, the 4 steps of conflict resolution that I teach, and then identifying, understanding, expressing, and managing your emotions. And then realizing that this is very hard for a child to do without co-regulation. And in that moment, there was no adult to co-regulate with. And that's what can happen in a classroom. So at classroom, we should really just honor teachers so much, because this can happen so fast, right? So the parallel for those of you who are working with adults is the same thing can be happening. It's just a different level, because you're typically working with people whose brains are fully developed. But that doesn't mean that they don't flip their lids. And that doesn't mean that their mindset might be impacting their ability to stabilize when they're with other adults, working with other adults, or working with kids. So that's the other thing I do with teachers a lot, is what came up for you when you saw this, right? What part of your brain were you in? Happens a lot in the CFC. I see people flip their lids. Yeah, and more so, I am sure, in the last year or 2. I have so many people, I work with a lot of people who are in corporate culture, and, just talking to me like, these major corporations, and they're like, oh my gosh, people are unraveling. It is incredible. Like, yeah, the brain can only take so much uncertainty. It is really intense. And then the story, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
With the example you just gave, where you might ask the teacher, well, what do you think, Tim is doing? And he's like, well, he always wants what he wants, and he never, his parents don't parent him well at home.
There it is.
So he just gets everything he wants.
Yeah.
So if we're in a consultation, let's say we're talking to another adult about another adult, maybe, and that's their response. And they're not flipping their lid, like this adult is calm. They're just saying, well, the parent just doesn't, they're lazy or whatever they want to say. Where do you feel like their mind maybe is? And where do you meet them at with those kinds of beliefs and thoughts?
Yeah, 2 great questions. So where I think their mind is at is, I think their brain has picked up on enough signals of warning when they've been engaged with that parent, that they've developed a mindset, belief that this parent is lazy. I mean, this is very judgmental, yeah? Lazy, and we're judgmental people, we judge. Lazy and all those things. The story in that person's head has come from enough signals of warning. So a signal of warning might be the parent didn't follow through. The signal of warning might be the parent missed a meeting. The signal of warning, I don't know what signals of warning are, but there were. Because if there were signals of welcome, that story couldn't exist, right? But it's also clouded by the person that's sitting there telling that story, the way that they've lived their life, their perceptions they've gathered over time. Because they may tie these signals of warning to the adjective lazy, whereas another person would just be like, they're overwhelmed, they're stressed. So this is why it's so complicated about how to approach a person. Because when I hear someone say that a parent or another human is lazy, like I feel that in my stomach, I have a gut-wrenching reaction to it. So I have to, first of all, check me and breathe and be like, oh, okay, that's a trigger for me to shame and blame another human like that. It's just not helpful, is my belief. And I have to be able to balance that and be like, so what comes up for you? How do you feel when you believe that? What's it like for you to believe that thought about that parent? Well, it's just true. So I just believe it. So I would be curious. I would lean in and instead of trying to change that mindset, I would help that person tell the story even further as a start. So I'm going to connect with you in your story. My goal isn't to make you wrong. My goal is to help you with self-understanding. How does that belief enhance your relationship with the parent? So you have no control over if the parent follows through, or if the parent shows up at meetings, or if the parent does what the OT says, but you do have an influence on the parent feeling seen, soothed, safe, and secure. So if you're believing she's lazy, it's not going to be helpful for that parent. It doesn't seem like it's helpful for you either. You said you just don't, you avoid, you're really, anxious when you're starting or you dread seeing this parent. Right, I hear that. I dread going to that parent meeting. Wow. Can you imagine what that's like for you? I mean, you know what it's like for you. Can you imagine how that's passed off to the parent? I don't think they know this. Oh, okay. How do you know they don't know this? Right? Like what might be the impact on the parent? So if this is harder for you going in feeling this way, what can we do to help you create a different story about that parent? Where's the evidence to support the belief that they're lazy? And they may be like, they don't follow through, they don't, okay. Where's the evidence that doesn't support that? Well, she works 2 jobs. Okay. Yep. Right. So do you see what I'm saying? Does that make sense? Without being able to know the person you're talking about and be specifically go deeper with that, which we will be able to do in our reflective groups, which we'll talk about at the end of today. We'll start to talk about that opportunity. You guys have to go deeper with this type of consultation with me. But in general, does that give you a sense of how I might approach that?
Yes, thank you.
Do you need more on that? Did I not answer one of the questions?
No, I'm just trying to put it in my mind and think about it in actual terms with some of the folks I work with. So
yeah, for sure. And I will invite you. I would love to do more of that. So following this training series, you have the opportunity to sign up for reflection groups, 3 90-minute reflection groups with me, and we can go deeper in that with that stuff. So this is to introduce you to the information, and then we'll go deeper with the particulars in those reflection groups. If you would like to attend, I'm happy to do that.
Laura, I just wanted to make a comment and a question.
Yeah.
The comment is, yeah, just like the person is lazy. What I used to hear all the time about kids is they're not motivated, as if somehow that explained and gave us some helpful direction about how we could support them. So I guess for me, the issue is, and this would come up in consultation, when you encounter a consultee, and I think we all do, and we see this with a lot of our service coordinators who want to kind of get, it sounds dismissive when you go to judgment.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking it's serving some purpose.
Oh, yes.
For our consultees.
Yep.
So there's the first thing of trying to understand what the needs are that are being served.
Yeah.
That's kind of the question. It is effectively exploring
Yeah.
those kinds of things.
Yes, and I love that you just kind of positioned us perfectly for what I'm going to introduce about drives and needs. You said it's serving some sort of need. I 100% agree. And part of what makes this work difficult is calling someone lazy, saying their kids are not motivated, be like, how in the world could that serve a need? It is, it's serving a need. And already what we know is the brain likes to predict and know. So if a parent isn't following through, if a child doesn't clean up toys or isn't motivated, we label them. Labeling is a way for us to understand. Okay, now I've made sense of that. That child's lazy, that parent's not motivated, vice versa. Labeling. So
and I would say in the DSM and the DCO, we love our labels.
we love our labels, which is why I don't take insurance as a therapist. Never have. I refuse to have to give somebody, especially a child, but anybody, a diagnosis for me to make money. Now, can diagnostic categories help us? Yes, because the brain likes to categorize. And there's huge, human behavior is huge. So it can be helpful, but it can be harmful. Like anything, it can be overdone. But this is, again, you guys, why working with humans is so difficult, is that saying someone's lazy or saying the child's not motivated or the child just wants what he wants when he wants it serves the need of helping us feel better in some way. Now we've understood. When I go into a preschool classroom, so people know I'm here for the children who are having difficulties, children with challenging behavior, what they would call challenging children. And you know me, I would say children with challenging behavior. And I go in and they go, he's my runner, she's my biter, they're my da-da-da, and they give me all the labels. They're categorizing. They're trying to make sense. Teachers are charged with an impossible task. In California, it's a 1 to 10 ratio. I don't know what it is in Illinois, but they've got 30 tiny humans under the age of 5 and 3 adults. Ridiculous, ridiculous. So the categories are a signal. They're stressed. They're put in an impossible position. Those ratios are awful. Should never be that big. Sorry, I'm on a soapbox, but the idea is that, of course, the categories are going to come. So when I sit with someone and they're categorizing and labeling, it's just a signal to me that they're in a stress response state, that they are feeling out of their depth. They feel out of control. They've picked up on too many signals of warning. And one of the biggest signals of warning is when we believe, not feel, believe, I am incompetent. I can't handle it. I'm not good enough. So that parent who looks lazy may be running those beliefs. I can't take care of my kids. I can't handle it. I'm not good enough. I can't trust myself. My needs don't matter. So these are a lot of cognitions that I work with, especially in EMDR, helping people reveal or discover when this happens, what are you believing about yourself? I'm believing I'm not good enough. I'm believing I can't trust myself. And they may react as if they don't trust you, or they don't trust the other person, or I'm going to push away, you're giving me too much to handle. But it's tied to some beliefs that aren't feeling good as well. And we're going to get into that a little bit, hopefully, and maybe later today, but maybe next time. Great questions, you guys. We will be taking a break in about 20 minutes, just so you know, but you can take a break anytime. You're fully grown. So needs. This is serving some need, absolutely. Now, again, you guys, needs can be huge. So what we're going to do is we're going to build upon the work of Rick Hanson, Hanson, who introduced me to the idea that all human needs can be categorized under 3 categories. Okay, here's the categories again. We're not going to get away from it. Our brain has to organize things. Otherwise, we're in a state of disarray. So we're going to look at needs, the humans needs, 3 basic needs, and drives, the brain's drives. Okay? So the brain has 3 drives. It is motivated, here's that word too, to approach the good, approach rewards. When something seems welcoming or good to us, we are in an approach a place from our drive from our brain, and our mindset can be on board with it too. Sometimes they don't link, but sometimes they do. Much of the time they do. Want to approach that. That seems good. I like that. That will be fulfilling for me. Or avoid. Avoid signals of harm or warning. Oh, sorry, I should put this up. Avoid signals of harm or warning. So even outside your conscious control, without your mind getting on board, your brain can start to activate you into an avoid state. Right? And then attach. Attach is the third drive. We know this is wired into us from birth to attach to others, engage others. Now, here's the rub, you guys. Attachment can look like appropriate behaviors, but it can also look like inappropriate behaviors. This is often where people say, she's just doing it for attention. Pin in that, no one ever does anything for attention. They do it for engagement. Attention is this. I'm giving you my full attention. Even if a child says, watch me, they typically want you to respond as you're watching them. Yeah, okay. So attach, avoid, approach. Approach, avoid, attach. All behavior can be looked at through one or more of those drives. Okay. Then linked to that is to meet our basic needs and to avoid having our basic needs not be met. So even though you're not consciously thinking every moment, is this meeting one or more of my basic needs? I want to start you being able to do that, right? Unless some of you have listened to Dr. Rick Hansen before. Has anyone ever listened to him and know about these 3 basic needs? Usually when I do this, people are like, I've never heard this. Okay, let me know if you have. So the 3 basic needs are for safety, satisfaction, and connection. So outside of our conscious control, our brain is striving to get our safety, satisfaction, and connection needs met. We all already knew about safety. We know that from the brainstem, we're wired, from birth, we're wired to scan for signals of warning and signals of welcome. So safety would be signals of warning. But I want to let you know this is not just about physical safety. The brain is consciously striving to get our emotional safety needs met. And what we mean by emotional safety is whatever emotions come up, not to not feel emotions, that's not emotional safety, but whatever emotions arise, we can navigate them, we can handle them, we identify, understand, express, and then manage them. So you can imagine in 0 to 5, there's a lot of times children are feeling emotionally unsafe because they don't have the neural circuitry to be able to identify, understand, express, and manage their emotions reliably, and they need co-regulation. But you'll notice so do those adults sitting across the desk from you, right? Even though they have the circuitry. So sometimes when you're seeing challenges in consultation, this is because of the drive that the person has to either approach, avoid, or attach, and then to get their safety needs, satisfaction needs, and connection needs met, or to avoid when they're not being met. So that person who's calling the parent lazy, there's some level of feeling dissatisfied, right? Can we just agree? I mean, if you're calling someone lazy, it's a signal that you're likely feeling dissatisfied with your relationship with this person. Maybe not entirely in your life, but with your relationship with this person. And there's some sort of sense of disconnect. I can't get through to this parent. You know, I've tried many different ways to motivate this parent. I've tried many different ways to let this parent know. I've done everything I know. The result is that person may be feeling disconnected and emotionally unsafe because I feel overwhelmed. I feel incompetent. I feel useless. I feel worthless. And possibly I believe I'm not effective, I'm not good enough, right? So this idea about no matter what challenges you're seeing, you can consider now, all right, this person's in an avoid state or an attached state, inappropriately trying to attach, right? Possibly, or maybe appropriately, or are they in an approach state? Are they still approaching? And then they show up for their meetings with the parent, but are they avoidant? So whenever someone says to me, I'm dreading it, there's a level of avoid. state going on, right? Drive going on. And then looking at, okay, what safety, satisfaction, and connection needs are unmet or are being challenged, or do you perceive are threatened? So first of all, you using it for yourself when you're meeting with the person who's bringing in the challenge. And then eventually, as you get good at that with yourself, you can start to bring this in with consultation. I do this when I consult all the time, not just in my private practice, but when I do it in early childhood. I see a parallel here: safety, using appropriate behaviors to meet needs, satisfaction, acquisition of knowledge and skills, connection, positive social emotional skills, and relationships. Beautiful. I love that connection. So that and way more. Yes, you're getting it. Yep. Yes.
Those
Yep.
are the three child outcomes that
So
we
good.
assess with kids.
So good.
it's like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. So safety, interestingly, to this part about using appropriate behaviors to meet needs, will help that person and everybody else feel physically safe and emotionally safe, right? When a child's in an integrated place and can use appropriate behaviors to get their needs met, everybody has a chance to feel safe. Everybody has a chance to feel satisfied, and everybody has a chance to feel connected, right? They're more likely to be able to meet all three. When behavior is inappropriate or challenging in some way, it is always that person who's having the challenging behavior, child or adult, is having their safety, satisfaction, and connection needs compromised. I would say it's almost, I can't imagine a scenario in which someone's like, oh no, my safety, satisfaction, connection needs fine. I'm just having this maladaptive behavior because it's fun. You know, even I just thought to myself, sociopath, but even there, obviously, right? Sociopathic tendencies, these people do not have a good sense of safety, satisfaction, and connection. All right, so this is the new understanding about the brain, right? So when challenges arise, people can either approach, avoid, and or here at attach. And all three can be happening at the same time. An approach behavior can also be to avoid something else. Remember in the beginning when I asked you write down, call in what you hope to call in today, and the other side is you might need to let go of something. This is true with approach, avoid, attach too. If you're approaching, Tim was approaching Maria, and the function was likely to get the Duplos, but he was also approaching Maria to avoid disruption of his plan and to express the emotions that he was feeling, which I don't know what they were, but he had emotions going on. So he was also attaching with her inappropriately, but he was attaching. Approach, avoid, attach. I'm going to give you a chance to.
Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm actually going to skip a slide I have in here. I added it last minute. I may have time to loop back to it. If I don't, I'll probably infuse some of it into our practice groups. It's not necessary. It was just a little added on piece. But I'm going to skip into getting to the framework because this is something that was promised to you. So I'm skipping over this slide, which I hope to get back to later. Oh, you can't see it. I skipped over that slide about the 4 Ds. It's cool stuff, but for now, let's get to the 4 A's. So just launching into this framework for navigating challenges, whether in your role as a consultant, as your role as a parent, as your role as a sister, whatever, navigating challenges, just based on this tenet that the brain strives to make sense of things outside of our conscious awareness. It's a meaning-making machine. So what we're trying to do is attend and befriend to challenges. And the attend and befriend language is also in alignment of the respond versus react, attend and befriend. So how do we do that? Well, when the pandemic hit, I started to think about what could I offer that would be value added in this moment that I've never seen anywhere else. So I'll take things that I know that I've used in early childhood with my clients, and I'll create this framework and let's see how it goes. For the past 2 years, I've been testing this out and seeing And the feedback has been seeing how it works, seeing how it's helpful, how it can be used as a guide. A framework is a guide, right? So this is a guide for you in what to do when faced with a challenge. How you implement this guide is up to you, right? You're going to bring your own unique process to this. So the first A is acknowledge. Just acknowledge that there's a challenge. This is where responding starts. Instead of jumping right over the challenge and rushing to fix it, just take the pause. Much like we saw Tim take the pause. What's going on? Okay. What's here? Be present with what is. Notice and name the challenge. And this is based on the tenet, consultation doesn't mean fixing. You're not a fixer, you're a consultant. Okay. So we want to avoid the 4 Ds, which I haven't unpacked for you yet, but I'm just going to preview. What I've observed over 30 years is this habit in human beings, cross-culturally, cross-gender, of when challenges arise, we tend to dismiss, deny, distract, or direct. So by direct, I mean direct our attention to fixing the problem. I just had to get a 4th D, right? I couldn't say fixing. So I was trying to make it 4 Ds so your brain would remember it. So dismiss the challenge. Oh, there's nothing to worry about. This is no big deal. Deny, not even putting your attention on it at all. Like it doesn't exist. Like what Tommy was saying, denial. It doesn't even exist. Distracting, wine, ice cream, food, staying too busy, putting your mind elsewhere, just cleaning your house instead of focusing on the challenge. Distracting, it's something we do. Or directing, rushing to fix. I'm asking you to use your mind to override those autopilot reactions to challenges and stay with it. Stay present with it. It can be hard. And then seek a 360 view of the challenge. So acknowledging the challenge is the start, but as you're acknowledging the challenge, you're getting the 360 view of it when you attune. It's my favorite word, attune. There's 2 parts of attunement. First, I'm going to invite you to attune, make the U-turn and go inward to you. What is the story of my experience in the here and now in relationship to what's out there, to the challenge? Identify, understand, and express your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, body sensations. How am I experiencing this challenge? I just did a training on this Tuesday with a group of teachers down by the border here in San Diego. And it was fascinating that when I asked them to pause and attune, go inward of the challenge, almost everyone couldn't do it. Well, he said this, and then she said this, and then they and then how did you feel about that? Well, they were just not listening. And how did you feel about that? What were you thinking about that? What was the story related to you? It's fascinating. These 2 eyes that we've been given, we do look outward. I'm inviting you to look inward. And you guys have been great with this, but it's not a human strength. And no wonder we're programmed from early on. Look how you made her feel. Look how the others are cleaning up. Look how we cast the spotlight of children's attention outward constantly. Both are important, both and. This lack of interior gaze, this capacity to make the U-turn and go inward is really, really, it's a trigger for me. It's hard for me to watch, but it's why I do what I do. So I'm inviting you to use the skills. If you don't have them yet, practice making that U-turn. What's your relationship to this challenge? And then interpersonal attunement, of course. If your challenge involves other people, of course, we want to bring that same curiosity, openness, acceptance, and loving gaze toward the other person's experience. And we're guessing, right? Like Tommy and everybody else was trying to guess what Tim's experience was. That was interpersonal attunement, trying to tune in to, well, maybe he had a plan and perhaps he felt frustrated. Gorgeous. That's interpersonal attunement. Love it. What does the other person's story mean to me? So that's the place to do the connection. So if the other person's story is they were frustrated, they believed that no one was listening to them, they believed that the parent was lazy, they believe, what does that mean to me then? Make that U-turn again. So as you interpersonally attune, remember it's in the space between. So I'm imagining this might be going on in their interior landscape based on what they tell me, based on their body language, based on what they're not saying, based on the particular choice of words. And then what does that mean to me? And like somebody said in the reflection form, when someone calls another person lazy, it's triggering for me. That's very triggering for me. That's true interpersonal attunement. I attuned to them, and then I made the U-turn and attuned to me. So in this framework, the idea is as you acknowledge the problem, you've got to attune to really get a 360 gaze of it. If we rush to fix it without this gaze, we could be effective. Well, this is what I need to do. And you may be effective, but you might miss data. You might miss a way to be more effective by gathering more data. I'll say more about this in the example. Adopt. Third A is adopt. Now, it's adopt a stance of regulation, either self-regulation and or co-regulation. As you start to acknowledge and attune, you're already noticing and naming the challenge. So you've already started the regulation process, self or co, depending whether you're talking to yourself or just somebody else. This is in alignment with the research that Dan Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson did in their book, Whole Brain Child. Name it to tame it. Notice, I had notice first too. Notice, name it, tame it. So naming it, noticing it, really important for the regulation. How do we regulate something we're not aware of? We're not spending time noticing. If we're in a rush to fix, we just leap over it and get right to the fix. Maybe that's not the most effective way to regulate long-term. There can be moments, but maybe we do overdo it. If we're fixers, we probably overdo it. But it's what we've always done. We're on autopilot with it, right? It's what we've always done, and it's been somewhat successful. But if anybody's languishing, if anyone's feeling weary, perhaps some of this can help. When we don't know what to do, we do what we've always done. And so once we know there's other ways to do it, it can be hard to adopt the behavior and maybe string it together like this. You're like, oh, I do a little bit of that. I do a little bit of that. But what would happen if you strung it together in this way, in a framework? Try. So adopting the regulation in general is building upon the attunement. In the attunement, the focus isn't regulating, it's identifying, understanding, and expressing. And now we're at the regulating or managing those thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, perceptions, beliefs, biases. Right? We're looking at, when we attune, we become aware. And now that we have the awareness, how do we regulate? How do we balance? Yep. So this is where your self-soothing practices come in. So for me, I start with self-soothing. When I get triggered, when someone says they didn't have the time and I get triggered, what self-soothing practices do I have to help me feel safe, satisfied, and connected, both intrapersonally connected because I got triggered and interpersonally to the person that told me they didn't have the time. Yeah. That help me move from red or blue to green, or if I'm in the green when I'm getting triggered, to remain there. And then also considering when you're trying to self-regulate, that even though for most of us, if we're past the early 30s, our brain is fully developed, we still benefit from co-regulation. We know the littles need it. They can't self-regulate effectively on their own. They don't have the capacity to consistently self-regulate. Consistently. There's moments they can self-soothe, for sure. There's moments. But they need us to try to take some of that burden off of them, not leave them alone to self-soothe. So I don't let babies cry it out, right? They need us for co-regulation. So we still need it too. We're tribal creatures. So we choose what might others do to help me co-regulation. How can I ask them and approach them and attach with them to help me feel seen, soothed, safe and secure, or safe, satisfied, and connected? Adopt. The fourth is ask. So ask for what I need. What do I need to feel safe, satisfied, and connected? What What do I need to be able to respond versus react? So before I go any further with this step, I'll let you know these steps, the first three, are intermingled. So as you're acknowledging, you're attuning, you're adopting. As you're adopting, you're attuning and acknowledging. As you're attuning, you're adopting and acknowledging. I want the ask to come with a little bit of space. If you rush to ask what I need, you might miss some data. In particular, if you rush past how you feel and or what you're believing, what self-referencing beliefs are coming up, things like, I'm not good enough, I can't handle it, my needs don't matter. If you move past that too quickly, if you skip the attune step and really cast the net to gather those things, you could ask for what you need, but you haven't identified what's going on for you enough to really have all the information to know what might be helpful for you. So one way to integrate everything that we've learned is you're asking what you need. You might ask yourself, what might I need to approach, avoid, and or attach to meet my needs and or help others from the green zone? That's kind of like my stance as a consultant, as a trainer, as a therapist, whenever I'm working with human beings. What might I need first to approach, avoid, and or attach to meet my needs and or help others from the green zone? Yep. So you can even avoid from the green zone. It's mindful avoidance, mindful stepping back, right? Doesn't mean, avoiding harm is a healthy thing. If something feels harmful, how do you pull back from a responsive state? Yeah, I don't think I talked about that earlier. But green zone doesn't mean you're always approaching. Then consider your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and body sensations to identify your unmet needs, not just what the fix will be. So notice, naming, and normalizing, not dwelling. The feedback I've received from various people about this framework has informed what I've added in here, especially with consultants or coaches. The worry, the concern, the awareness is, but how do I know if I'm dwelling? Dwelling seems to be a real concern. Like if I pause too long, when I just get immersed in it, that is a risk for sure, especially if you don't have the neural circuitry yet, or if you're really depleted, there's a risk with that. But here's what I think mitigates the risk is the attuned awareness to, I'm going to use these components. I have an anchor, right? It's a framework. I have an anchor. I have a structure. I have a container, whatever language you want to use, so you don't dwell, that you don't get sucked in. And I think even having the awareness that there's a risk for that is important. But if it's a story in your head that prevents you from doing it, that's where it becomes, it wears out its use. And the example I have is someone in my family who lost a spouse. And the reaction was, I can't think about it. I have to just stay busy. Because the fear was, if I face my sadness, my sorrow, my grief, I will get sucked in. Right? Because the story in her head was, in the past, whenever I've had strong emotions, I've always just avoided, because when I didn't avoid, I was prone to depression. And that's a real experience. That's a real worry or concern. And I would add to that, which I did, was perhaps you just didn't have the structure to help support you in noticing, naming your feelings. Yep. So acknowledge, attune, adopt, and ask, a framework that you can take everything we've learned about the brain and the mind to inform how you navigate challenges. And in turn, do the same with your consultees. No matter what the content is, this process can be useful. So obviously you're going to bring to bear all of your existing competencies, your skills to implement each component. Notice I'm not saying step. This is not step by step. These are components of the framework. So you're navigating based on science, not habit. Questions, feedback?
Laura, can you say a little bit more about how one might recognize that they have moved from a position of substituting words, but I think they work, a position of self-reflection to one of rumination, which I think oftentimes you see with folks when the chief feeling is, anger or frustration. And, this is a challenge for me sometimes also when it seems that we're stuck in rehearsal of grievances.
Yeah. So what I hear you asking is, how can one be aware when they've fallen into the stuck place versus I'm still in that healthy kind of working through it place? Did I hear you right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is what I meant. And I mean, and it's a personal, this has been a personal journey for me. And I know, but I'm really more focused now on the idea of what are some strategies as a consultant when your consultee seems to be
stuck,
rehearsing their grievances about a client or their job or
Yep. So the strategies is the 4 A's. So as they're rehearsing, really your end is you're a guide. You're an attuned other. You're a presence. You're an organizing presence. That's a really beautiful phrase. You're an organizing presence for another person. So often what I realize is when someone's stuck in that rehearsal place, they keep going back to it. I make a U-turn and say, what could I possibly do differently to help that person feel felt? Perhaps I haven't attuned. Perhaps I haven't. So here are some of the consulting competencies. Have I summarized? Have I paraphrased? Have I validated? Have I empathized? How have I? Has my body language showing it? Is the prosody of my speech inviting signals of welcome versus warning? Those are some of the skills I have that I'm going to use throughout the framework to signal to the other person, I feel you, you're felt. And then with that, once someone can feel felt, they're more likely to be able to move toward integration of the experience and move out of rehearsal. That's not a straight line. That's our best option. There are people with severe anxiety disorders that perseverate, right? Perseveration is a character trait, is a behavior. It's not a character trait, it's a behavior that signifies a lot of anxiety. Yeah. So you're not going to cure or resolve the anxiety with the 4 A's, but you're going to help manage it. You're going to give a container. Because when I skillfully acknowledge with the other person the challenge, no wonder. Yes, what I hear you saying is, summarize, right? Attune. Wow. Seems like you really feel frustrated and angry. That makes sense. You spent a lot of time and energy on that and the person didn't show up. Yep. Attune, more of that. You're adopting a stance of co-regulation that perhaps can get them into their integrated brain and they can be unstuck. And then you get to the, what do you need? What do you need? Not what do you need to do? What do you need to feel safe, satisfied, and connected? What would help you, do you think? So I truly believe and stand behind this 4 A's. These are the strategies. These are the approaches. Now within the 4 A's, you use all your beautiful competencies, summarizing, validating, tuning the body language, the empathizing. You're in a coal mindset, right? And that could, I have seen it, I have felt it, I experience it day to day in my work as a therapist. That's what starts to unstick the person. Being seen, soothed, feeling safe and secure really does help people be able to navigate their challenges more skillfully. I think one of the difficulties is when we work with adults is that there's so many arenas that they're not feeling safe, satisfied, and connected in. Maybe their relationship domain, maybe their work domain, maybe as a community member, maybe as a person of color. they're not feeling seen, safe, soothed, and secure, safe, satisfied, and connected. Maybe as a person navigating a disability, maybe as a person who has a socioeconomic status that makes them vulnerable, right? There's so many factors that come in with adults, that when they're talking about a challenge with you in consultation, they're bringing all that in. And again, and still, I believe, acknowledge, attune, adopt, and ask. So in Zen Buddhism, they say chopping wood, carrying water, chopping wood, carrying water, to signify, let's take the extremely complex art of living and try to make it as simple as possible. No matter what the content, let's work it. Acknowledge, attune, adopt, ask. And the good news is, because it's a framework, not a model, and not step by step, there's wide variation in room to consider culture, neurology, socioeconomic status, race. There's wide variability in there, which I like, because Bruce Perry is the first one I heard that said, all models are wrong, but some are useful. And I like that humility, right? So all models are wrong, but some are useful. So his neural sequential model of therapeutics, which is freaking phenomenal, he's like, it's wrong sometimes, but it's still useful. Yeah. So this is a framework, not a model. And it isn't going to be magic. You're going to have to make it magic. And make it magical. Let's not make it magic. It won't be magic. It'll be magical though, and that it will bring some shifting and movement in. And
something I'm reminded of, just as so much of this I think is familiar to many of us, especially as many of us have been fan trained and all this, but I apologize for the background noise, my daughter's home, but I just had a major aha moment as you were working through the ask part, because I've been really sort of disappointed in myself in some of the work I've been doing. I'm like, why am I so reactive? Like, I am struggling with, empathy is not something I usually struggle with. And like for weeks now, I've been like, why am I not patient? Why am I not empathetic? And you were just walking through the ask. And I was just putting two and two together that, I really haven't been meeting some of my own needs that make it so easy for me. It's easy to tap into attuning and to empathizing. And I've been really second guessing just like my professional expertise, like, why am I doing such a bad job? But just as you were walking through that, I'm like, I need to get back here. I need to take this time and ask myself some things. And it just really brought a grounding to myself that I know, that's what it is. It's not, I'm not losing it.
No,
but
that's beautiful.
It's still there. So, but it does remind me that I've got to use this, I've got to keep it in my practice.
Yep.
In order for it to be effective.
No, it's really beautiful. And I think, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure others are feeling the same thing, is like, yes, you've been trained. Yes, you know this stuff. My goal is to take a lot of what you may or may not already know, put it in a cohesive framework, and then remind you, start with you. Don't always just be giving it to others. Start with you. I have to remind myself of it too, right? Because it's hard. We do this all day long as part of our jobs, especially the attuning we're supposed to. Now, I have one of my roles in part of my journey, and I think I told you guys this, is I would shadow people who were learning to be coaches. I would videotape them learning to be coaches. And they would come out and say, what do you think your strengths were? Well, I attuned, I gave them positive descriptive acknowledgement, I paused, I gave good eye contact. Then we watched the video, they did none of that. So I feel like even when people say I've been trained in this, I'm not saying you, Tara, but I'm just saying in general, like, we have to be humble enough to know, are we really doing it? Like, be really clear, like re-up. And then like, how do you know you are? Because I think your intention is good. Or like Tommy said, someone said to Tommy, hey, Tommy, share what you shared in the meeting. She's like, I don't know. I don't remember. Right. So like, we just really have to be committed to first attune, acknowledge, attune, adopt, and ask for ourselves, and then be checking in and be mindful of it as we're doing. Are we doing that? Was that attuned? Was that an attuned response? Or was that more reaction? Did I dismiss or deny? Did I rush to fix? Or am I really still, am I rushing? Right. So I feel like a new framework, because it's a novel way to put together things maybe you knew before, and then bringing in some new things that you might not have thought of, like safety, satisfaction, connection needs, can really help you kind of move toward flourishing. It's something new, or new way to try it in a different way. And then also that parallel process. You know, it's like we are consulting for others. Let's consult with ourselves first. You know, make that U-turn. And then Brene Brown, right? When we name and own hard things, it does not give them power, it gives us power. And I pull this quote, I haven't heard it anywhere in this training at all, but very often I hear, and you may hear from others, that it's just, you know, I don't want to dwell in it. I don't want to name it. I don't want to give it power. If I talk about it, I'm going to give it power. Yeah, there's a dance, right? Perseverating could get it power. You're being hijacked, but noticing, naming, and taming it, if you have a framework, doesn't give it those things power. It gives you the power. That's the goal. So I want to add one other component here that I'm pulling in for you guys. I don't always do this, but I'm pulling this in for you guys. I'm bringing this from my work with EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, the trauma. I don't know, lots of people know it as this. You see this, people follow the eye gaze bilateral integration to work through trauma. We're not doing that. This is not therapy, but I am going to bring in the training I've had around the idea about how self-referencing beliefs can impact our behavior. So already I've been asking you in your mindset before method groups, your breakout groups, to be considering what are your thoughts, your beliefs, your perceptions, to tune into mental activity. Now I'm laser focusing on cognitions, self-referencing beliefs. And you were given a handout. Maria sent it to you. It's called the Emotions and Cognitions Handout. It's a 3-page document that my mentor, Susie Morgan, created and I got it when I was trained as an EMDR clinician. And I'm focusing on page 2 and 3 of this handout. I like you having the emotions, though, also for use in your attend and befriend framework that I gave you. So some people are really easily notice and name emotions, but we can always expand our vocabulary, because when we expand our vocabulary, we also expand our awareness around the nuances in between different emotions, But for this moment, I'm focusing on the cognitions, both what's called negative cognitions and positive cognitions, negative self-referencing beliefs and positive. So when challenges arise, we want to make that U-turn and consider, what do I believe in the here and now? So automatic thoughts are things like, she's not listening to me. That wasn't effective. I wish I hadn't showed up today. So automatic thoughts, those happen all the time. So thoughts, these in EMDR, we talk about beliefs as these categorical and oftentimes real but not true beliefs that we run like apps in the background that can get triggered and pulled front of mind in a moment. And they usually come from a lifetime of experience, and we have evidence to support the beliefs, but again, they're real but not entirely true. And in terms of trauma, they tend to be beliefs that are laid down inappropriately in the moment, just to try to help us make sense of the situation. And so for you in this work, I'm asking you to make the U-turn and really consider both the negative and positive cognitions that might be related to the moment of the challenge. So what do you believe about the situation, about others, about yourself? If your self-referencing beliefs related to the challenge is or are a negative cognition, you're more vulnerable to reacting from the red or the blue zone. So let me give you an example. If you're sitting with a consultee and they call a parent lazy, or they say that a parent just isn't doing the work and something's wrong with them, and you make the U-turn and you feel, and the belief that you have is, I can't trust others, I am not safe, like you're feeling emotionally unsafe in that moment, that's a negative cognition that might be triggered from that situation. And it's linked to other situations where you really didn't believe you were safe and you really didn't believe you could trust others. you are more likely to react to that trigger. Versus if you have a belief about that same situation, that's from the positive cognition sheet, and you have them there, have it there so you can look at them, right? If the belief is, I can trust others, I can trust myself, I have choices now, I'm okay as I am, my needs matter, my beliefs matter, I am significant, I belong. So this person's making this comment, I don't like it, but I still have these positive cognitions. I'm not activating, negative cognitions are not getting activated. You are more likely to respond from the green zone. So our beliefs impact our behavior. We knew that. We knew that 2 trainings ago. We talked about that. We did the beautiful Gandhi quote. We know that. But what I like about this sheet is it really gives us an opportunity to sit with and explore which ones or which categories of cognitions do we run some of the time, much of the time, most of the time. And then what's the balance between the positive and the negative cognitions? So 2 reasons I gave you this handout. One is because it really dovetails nicely with this 4 A's framework. As you're going through the 4 A's framework for yourself, you can really look at, what am I truly believing? Whew, then no wonder I'm having such a hard time with this one. I'm believing right now that my needs don't matter. I'm believing I don't belong, I'm not significant. That's the belief that got triggered. Right? Or when you're feeling like, hey, I'm handling this really well, it's like, well, I'm really believing right now my needs matter. I'm significant. I have choices. I'm good enough. I belong. I am safe. Some of the cognitions on the sheet are about love relationships, right? So it won't come up in terms of your work relationship, but interestingly, even in work, you're not engaged in a love relationship with a person, but sometimes they can trigger your belief about a love relationship. So just be curious, open, accepting, and loving, and just see how this can possibly help you inform your use of the 4 A's. I'm not recommending necessarily that you do this with consultees. I think that that's a bridge too far for me to recommend that, because I don't really know the nuances of your work. It's really a therapeutic tool. So I don't know if that's outside your scope of competence in the work that you do. You know, I think you can ask people what they're thinking and believing, but you know, we can talk about this in groups. What the practical application to use with others as your social emotional consultant role, we can talk about that. My intention is for you to use it with you, because I am qualified to provide this for other people. I'm not saying you're not qualified. I just don't know. Okay. So a current situation, here's the idea in EMDR, in trauma in general, but in EMDR especially, a current situation in the here and now might be conflated by the mind and the brain with a situation from the there and then. So the language is the there and then impacts the here and now. In general, the brain's association and prediction machine, but then specifically about these beliefs, okay? So that's why I've been using this language, the story I'm telling myself right now, because it's real, and maybe it's not true. And if it weren't true, if there's a chance that possibly it isn't true that you don't belong, it isn't true that you're not safe, it isn't true that you have no choices, that you have no control, that you are incompetent, that you're not good. If that's not true, that can take some of the charge off of the challenging situation. Self-referencing beliefs. You'll also notice on this handout that they are organized by category. Responsibility, defectiveness is a category, safety, vulnerability, power, control, choices. Then there's some around identity and responsibility, action-based. Another key piece, just a tip, is that you'll find that what Tommy was talking about with people that seem to kind of get stuck and perseverate and stay in the story of the pain, there's often, almost always, high activation of their safety, vulnerability, negative cognitions. So they're not believing they're safe physically and or emotionally in general. And then when they get a current trigger in the here and now, it activates all of that. It's like it's linked. Remember those chains you make when we do the Christmas trees out of paper construction paper and you make that chain we used to put around the tree, maybe you still do. That's the linking that happens. So in the here and now, there's a challenge with a parent for your service coordinator, but then they're believing all these other beliefs. And so the challenge in the moment seems amplified. And then their challenge for you might seem amplified. I'll pause. Thoughts about this? How about if we do a role play? Would anybody be willing to do a role play with me to demonstrate the 4 A's? And I'm going to pull in a little bit about these beliefs. Would anybody be willing? You can make up a challenge, or you could bring in an actual challenge you're experiencing, and then we can just workshop what the 4 A's look like. Is anybody willing to do that with me? You could use a challenge from the past. You can use a current challenge. And again, you can make one up.
I can do it, Laura. That's fine.
Okay, beautiful. Who is this?
Carly.
Oh, great. Carly, let me find you. I want to see you. There she is. Hi, Carly. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll put this up so that the people who are, for all the rest of you, I want you to just even be taking notes perhaps about the evidence you see that I'm helping her acknowledge the challenge, when evidence of attunement. So you won't be able to see my intrapersonal attunement. You might be seeing me interpersonally attune to encourage her to intrapersonally attune, right? But evidence of language or body language, verbal, nonverbal, right? Of acknowledging, attuning, adopting, and asking. Okay. So be looking for what it looks like in action. You know it, you said you know it, but what does it look like? See if you can notice it when it's actually being done. Okay. So Carly, all I ask you to do, we have no backstory, right? No prep. I'm just going to ask you, we're going to just pretend I'm your consultant. You're coming in for consultation and you're working with a challenge. So I just want you to start with just acknowledging the challenge. What's been happening for you?
So you're the consultant. So this would be, I mean,
you're the consultee. I'm the consultant modeling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess, something that we talked about, that I talked about, like that I am actually having the challenge with at work is when I am helping my consultee and they're not doing the work, right? They're not doing the homework, or like they don't have time. So that is overall a general challenge of, you come to me, you say these things, I say, okay, let's reflect on them. And then, and I'm not trying to fix, and then it doesn't happen the next time I see you.
Yeah. So let me make sure I got this right. The overarching challenge is this pattern when you're trying to sit with a consultee and provide them opportunities to work through a challenge. And then in the space between, they haven't made the effort, done the work. And then you end up getting triggered when they say they don't have the time, or they haven't really made an effort towards moving along. Am I with you?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. I'm just going to invite you, just for this practice, this session, to think of one particular person. You don't have to share it with us, but just one particular person that this recently happened with. Is it possible?
Yes. Because
you're like, oh yeah, got it. Okay, beautiful, beautiful. The reason I'm doing that too is sometimes if we're general, sometimes we can't really see as much, but specifically sometimes it helps. So beautiful. So I'm really curious to learn more about this challenge. Can you walk me through a little bit for you? What happens for you inside when this comes up? Tell me more about your thoughts, your beliefs, body sensations, feelings. Tell me the story of your experience with that.
when the challenge arises and I know that the person hasn't, done the things that we talked about or attempted to,
Yeah.
I immediately know that I get, I start to talk faster. Like my heart rate starts to go up, and then I know this is happening in real time. And then I just start thinking, I don't know what we're going to talk about today then, because the whole point of today was then to come and talk about what you've been doing since we last met.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And now I'm like frustrated, like,
Yes.
okay, do we need to go back there and then talk about, okay, what was challenging about the things we, strategized together, and so I know that like physically I'm feeling like my heart just and not racing, like nervous, just like, okay, I don't know what to, and then I probably, and then I see Tommy, and then I probably get I don't know. I mean, I would wonder if my face would change or anything like that. I would, I have like people say I have like, I just sometimes just stare. And so they never know what I'm thinking. But I want that too. Like if my face would change, if they would, from what I'm actually feeling. But
Ooh, so good. So much juicy self-awareness in there, Carly. I really appreciate your ability to drop in and engage in that just on the fly, because the parallel between here and then is you weren't prepared to do this, right? You're doing this on the fly, just like they're asking you like you were prepared to talk about what steps they took and they didn't. So really just want to acknowledge your effort with that. And then make sure that I heard what you said, some really nice awareness of some body sensations, maybe your heart racing, feeling it isn't from nervousness. You were saying you didn't name what it was for, but it's there. It's more of a, right? And then the wondering about your facial expressions, which could be conveying a signal that you might not intend to be saying. You might be feeling it, but you just have a wondering or curiosity. But what you're clear about is the belief, the expectation was that you guys were in this mutual relationship. You had this agreement that you meet and you make a plan to help support the person that you're consulting with in their efforts to work through whatever they're working through. And when they show up and that hasn't happened in any way, then you feel frustrated was the emotion that you used. Yep. Am I with you?
yes.
Okay, beautiful. So I have just another curiosity sticking with you. Are there any maybe of the beliefs that come up for you? So if you look at page 2 of that handout, the negative cognitions related to this person in this moment with this situation where there doesn't seem to be movement and they just show up, what negative beliefs might be triggered for you, if any?
I do think that I guess this would be a negative belief that I wasn't good enough, right? It wasn't, the strategies weren't effective enough, or they didn't obviously resonate enough with the person. So the person just didn't do them.
Okay.
So that falls back on me. So I think that maybe that's the immediate thing I might go to of like, what did I do that didn't make this happen?
Yeah. And so what you're bringing to demonstrating really well is the difference between thoughts and a negative cognition. So the negative cognitions you choose from a sheet, and you did, you said, maybe I'm not good enough. And you started to tell the story of why, the automatic thoughts. What could I have done differently? Maybe the strategies weren't good enough, right? So if you are thinking the strategies weren't good enough, if you were thinking you didn't do enough or could have done something different or more, the link that makes it really stressful is if it's tied to I'm not good enough. And we often don't stop to think that. Some people do. But if that's lurking there in any capacity, it's really helpful just to notice and name it. So good for you, right? If there's any chance that is activating a belief, I'm not good enough, then that can be very, very stressful. And just allowing yourself to soothe yourself. So no wonder I feel some of this. No wonder I feel the frustration. No one wants to believe they're not good enough. Okay. So let's just like pausing to just include that as some of the data that might be activating you. And then again, that phrase, no wonder that. No wonder no one wants to believe that. Yeah. So I want to ask you, when you're tuning in, well, first, let me pause. Are there any other negative cognitions on there that you think might get triggered?
I guess in this instance, I don't know if there would be another negative.
Yeah, I have a curiosity about one, and it's a curiosity. I have no idea. So I'm asking. You'll know. So you mentioned this idea about you, like I summarized it. I paraphrased it. I paraphrased. I didn't summarize. I used different language, but I was getting the sense that like in the consultation relationship, there's this kind of agreement about how you guys operate. And one of the agreements, tacit or explicit, is, hey, we do this planning and then you go work on it. Did I get it right?
Yeah.
So when they don't, and they come back and nothing's been done, is there any bumping up against my needs don't matter?
Oh, I mean, I guess, yeah.
So isn't it just interesting, right?
Yeah, no, that is totally interesting. Like, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, I think we're kind of wired to be like, well, we're consultants. It's not about our needs, but we're humans. It is about our needs, right? So yeah, you have a need to like feel good about your job, feel good about your capacity, feel competent, feel effective, feel like you're making a difference. It's why we do this job in part.
Right.
So it's just being that tender awareness to, my needs don't matter, right? Which feels real, but isn't true, right? Ultimately, like she's not doing the work at you.
Right.
But it's just that awareness of like, yeah, it does feel like that. It does feel like that. The belief is there. Okay. So now if we could just for the purposes of demonstrating the framework, just skip to this like interpersonal attunement. What might you imagine based on observing their body language, tone of voice, all this stuff, and also the content of what they're saying? What might you imagine the story of their experiences when they show up and they haven't done anything different? What's the story of their experience?
Well, I would, that they're not good enough, that they disappointed me possibly because they didn't do the work, right? And because the body language is very, and I feel that, and just having history with the person, it's like, this like push of like, I don't want them to feel bad about not doing the work, but like I'm triggered by this. And so if I'm feeling what she's feeling, how could she not feel what I'm feeling? Right. Like, and I'm bothered by it, but like she also, I can kind of imagine her story as I let her down. I can't do this, things like that.
Absolutely.
Which, obviously not what I'm going for.
Not what you're going for. Real, but not true for her. So, right. So real for her, but not true.
Right.
So there's that, you're in that shared experience. So now here's a way that you guys are joined. You're experiencing similar things about this situation. No one's winning from this. So those were the imagined beliefs that she might be having. What is she actually telling you when you interpersonally attune to her? What's the story she actually shares with you?
That there was just too much work to do, like I needed to do my IFSPs. I needed to, my husband was, sick out of work, and so I was with the kids. I mean, so there's like which are very valid, excuses of like why things, don't get done. Right. They're, but, those are the things,
Beautiful.
That
she says, that you've tuned in, you've taken that in from her. And then will she share her emotions about it? Any feelings? What has she shared about how she feels about not getting it done?
No, actually, not about not getting it done, just about something that she has to do. And it's like, but I thought we had agreed that we had, right. So there, I know maybe if there was a shared emotion, I would be like, okay,
And then what do you think gets in the way of you asking? How do you feel about that?
I guess probably I don't want it to come across that I am disappointed in her that she didn't do it, or that I'm frustrated with her.
So asking her how
or-
she feels, you're afraid she'll believe that you're feeling. If you ask her how she feels, you're worried.
Like all these beliefs, right? All these stuff, right? That's not even right. It's like one belief after the other, this whole reflection, right? Which
Yep.
you know, is why it's challenging, right?
Why it's challenging. Yeah. Because we talk about attunement, right? And attunement, sitting with your consultee and being like, oh yeah, you had ISSPs to do, your husband was sick, whatever. Wow. So you couldn't get it done. So how do you feel about that? But your worry is that she's going to somehow sense the asking how she feels is you activate coming from a place of disappointment or frustration. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Great to name it. Just notice it and name it. Notice it and name it. And then just be curious from you, what would it take for you to take the exquisite risk to ask her that, right? To interpersonally attune with her in that moment and maybe reveal some of that. Maybe it'd be relieving to her to share an emotion. And maybe it'd be really revealing to you to share an emotion. We're both frustrated, huh? This can be frustrating for both of us in a uniting way. But again, this is set and setting, like you have to know that person. I don't know that person, so I can't advise you to do that. It's just part of the attunement process. Emotions are happening, right? Energy and motion is happening both for you and her. Just an interesting thing. But yet it's not being said. So it's creating some pressure within you probably, and in the space between you and within her. Yeah. So then as you're getting to this place of you're working this through with me now, you're acknowledging it, you're attuning to it. I just want you to notice, what does it feel like in your body as you're talking about this now, as we're at this place with it? What's coming up for you in your body sensations? Are you feeling any of that heartbeat that you do in the there and then?
No.
No. What are you noticing?
I mean, I'm noticing, you know, I guess a different perspective on it, or just thinking about it differently. And I guess I'm maybe overthinking it, right? So just doing that thing of just like, how did that feel for you is very, you know, obviously I asked those questions, but like, it wasn't at the right time. You know what I mean? Like I shouldn't think so much about when to ask those questions and why, you know, versus that. So just, I think, yeah, I'm definitely a different level of calmness.
Yeah. Oh, calm. Okay, good.
I'm not so activated.
Yeah,
right
so
now.
activated. Okay, great. And where do you feel that in your body? What's the body feel like with that? Just bringing you into the body instead of here up. What do you feel in your body?
Well, I mean, I think my way I'm sitting is different, and like,
okay, nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Yeah. Not like it's tense in my shoulders.
Okay, good. But good to notice, because if you had the story of like, sometimes my face, people are wondering, whatever. Sometimes if we can really tune into your body, you can start to notice the facial expressions too. So I just followed your lead there, where you had told me that perhaps that's a thing you wanted to check in about. So noticing and naming your body sensations can be really helpful too. Yeah. And this, you did right there, this moment you said, I shouldn't be so, and I can't remember your exact words, something about I shouldn't be overthinking asking her the emotions. Just going to invite you to not should on yourself.
Yep, I say, yep, don't should on myself. Yep.
Don't should on yourself. So just an awareness. Yeah. So, but that means a part of you, like your inner critic, got activated, and she's like, come on, Carly, you know better. You shouldn't. Right. And that's okay. She's trying to protect you and trying to get in there and be like, use your skills. But instead, just invite her to step back and be curious. I wonder why I didn't. Right. I just wonder why I didn't. And you don't have to share with us now, but that's a really great thing, to stepping back and going, okay, so asking feelings is something I normally do, and I didn't in this moment. I wonder why. Let me be curious. And don't jump to shoulding on yourself. There might have been a really good reason why. Yep. But is there a reason for now? Could it perhaps ease the tension within you in the space between you? I don't know. Yep. And then let's just go for the final, asking what you need. So in this moment, like a primary goal, what do you believe would help you feel safer, more satisfied, and more connected in relationship to this challenge?
I mean, I think just, having the grace or the ability to name it would feel better. Yeah, just like, I guess, like you said, like giving it a name. Like I'm very like, once I can give, I think maybe most things a name or like a concept or something behind it, like I can
Mhm.
fully get behind it and then let the other stuff go in a way of like, okay, this
Yeah.
makes sense to me.
Okay. So for you, noticing and naming really helps. And from the
Yeah.
brain, that's like inviting the left, the logic, the linear, the reasoning, the left gets on board and it helps tame some of the right's activation. So the integrating the left and the right, that makes sense. And so you believe you feel safer, more satisfied, more connected, just the naming itself. And then if I could, I'd like to build upon that and also invite, if you look at the positive cognition sheet now, what might you be believing about yourself when this challenge arises that's actually a positive cognition or cognitions?
I mean, I do feel like, some of these, I feel like a lot of these, like yeah. I am worthy, I'm competent, some of those, yeah, this is my first time looking at them, so it's so interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
So even as you said, I'm worthy, I'm competent, you kind of shook it off. Don't shake it off. What you could do when you're working through a challenge is take this sheet and be like, oh yeah, despite the fact that this is challenging and triggering, I still have that overarching belief. I'm worthy. I'm competent. That can be very soothing for the nervous system to notice and name that belief about yourself that you feel like, yeah, regardless of what challenge comes up, I believe I'm competent. I believe I'm worthy. Right. So it can actually really activate some lowering of the stress response system. So what you might need to feel safe, satisfied, and connected is to touch upon some of those positive cognitions. So that positive self-talk, but in this really guided and structured way that you guys now have access to. Because sometimes when we get into a story that's positive, it links up with the negative. So it's just a safety mechanism to really just choose some from the sheet. Yeah, beautiful. And then we're running out of time, so I appreciate you doing this. I would also ask you what you might need to stay in the green zone. I gave you an experience of that, choosing a positive cognition. But if we had more time, I'd now walk through a little bit more about helping you be in the green zone, some self-soothing strategies. Yeah, but yeah. So thank you, Carly. Thank you for going through that and taking that.
Yeah, thank
Putting
you.
yourself out there. Yeah. So any feedback, questions, just an in vivo role play of working through the 4 A's. I want you to just notice as you were listening to it too, just for yourself, your own kind of self-awareness, were you looking for all the ways this wouldn't work or all the ways this doesn't apply to you or times where it wouldn't happen? That's definitely a protective mechanism that a lot of people have when they learn something new. And that's okay. Just be aware of it and then scan for what would it take for you to be open to considering and allow your negativity bias that got activated, kicking it out to be like, okay, I get it. That perhaps it would be challenging. And yet what am I open and what am I missing? What are the possibilities? Yeah. So questions about that? To use the 4 A's framework, you don't ever have to use these self-referencing beliefs. This is a value added, something I've added in addition. If you don't resonate with those at all, put it down. Don't stress yourself out with it. It's just a different way to kind of organize things. I find it incredibly useful. You don't have to use it, and we can discuss it in the groups a little bit more, where we can get into more of a focused discussion. So just to recap, in terms of what we've really worked on over the past several sessions is looking at challenges and consultation from a brain and mind perspective, the how of challenges. So we focused on brain development, the upstairs and downstairs brain, the integration, the flipping versus flipping the lid. We focused on the drives, the approach, avoid, or attach to get our needs met. And we can notice that the brain drives and the mind gets on board to sort of inform how we drive. And then those safety, satisfaction, and connection needs. So all the time really looking for getting kind of a PhD in general. So I really have clarity on, in general, what feeds my sense of safety, satisfaction, and connection. I know that. I can tell you that story. I know it like that. I can also tell you in the moment, perhaps when I'm having a challenge, make the U-turn and go, this is because in part, the satisfaction isn't there. I feel disconnected. Yep. So just sort of getting skilled in that for yourself to kind of help you with this collective weariness, with this stress response, really noticing and naming for yourself. And then, of course, the reactivity versus the responsivity, the green, the red zone, the blue zone, the settings. So really looking on how that comes into play when a challenge arises. And again, our goal isn't to be always in the green zone. It's unrealistic. It's in polyvagal theory, we talk about this idea of having a ladder. And sometimes we're up at the top of the ladder, evolutionarily adaptive. The highest order functioning is being social in the green zone, socially engaging behaviors. And then sometimes we dip to the red, right? We're in fight or flight for a little bit. How long does it take you to get back up to the green? What helps you to get back up to the green? And then what happens when you go all the way down to the blue? The blue is believed to be the least evolutionarily adaptive. It's that point where like your nervous system is outside of its window of tolerance, and we don't want to be in the blue for long. It's very maladaptive place. Mobilizing is always considered to be healthier for the nervous system than the immobilization. So blue, red, green, up and down the ladder, just acknowledging where am I on the ladder right now and why? I don't feel safe. I don't feel satisfied. I don't feel connected. And so I'm fighting, I'm yelling, I'm avoiding, I'm shutting down, I'm freezing, right? And just what's going to help get you out? I believe the 4 A's can help get you out. No matter where you are, red or blue, I believe the 4 A's can get you out. There's other strategies that help get people out, but I believe this framework can help you in consultation. And then the mind, just this idea of the story you're telling yourself, you're just this juicy mental activity that's yours. You own it, but are you aware of it? What's the story you're telling yourself? So the next steps is if you're coming to the groups, great, I'll see you there. If not, spend time making sense of this for yourself, right? Practice the 4 A's using the updated Attend and Befriend handout. I added a column on that handout I gave you last time that includes an opportunity for you to look for your positive or negative cognitions. Again, skip it if you don't like it. Just wanted to give you the opportunity to work with that.